I was sitting on my front porch, polishing the walnut stock of a 12-gauge shotgun that hadn't seen the light of day since the Korean War, when the circus finally came to town. And let me tell you, it wasn't elephants and acrobats. It was a convoy of 4 beige golf carts and a flatbed truck loaded with lumber, led by a woman in a pastel pink blazer, holding a megaphone like it was the staff of Moses. She thought she was Moses, actually, preparing to part the Red Sea of my defiance and lead her people to the Promised Land, which just so happened to be my private fishing pier that I'd built with my own 2 hands back when Reagan was in the White House. Her name was Patricia Sterling. Everyone called her Patty, though I had a few other names for her that I won't repeat in mixed company, and she was the newly elected president of the Lakeside Reserve Homeowners Association. She looked me dead in the eye from 50 yards away, raised that megaphone to her lips, and screeched, "Mr. Vance, per the emergency vote of the board, we are here to take possession of the community amenity. Please step aside or law enforcement will be contacted." She thought she was terrifying, standing there with her hired muscle and her clipboard warriors, thinking she was just going to bulldoze over a 64-year-old retired structural welder because she had a title and a fake sense of authority. What Patty didn't realize was that she wasn't initiating a property seizure. She was walking face-first into a buzzsaw that I'd been sharpening for 3 weeks. She didn't know about the 3 high-definition trail cameras hidden in the tree line. She didn't know about the folder of evidence sitting on the table next to my coffee. And she certainly didn't know that the 3 landscapers working in the bushes behind my truck were actually sheriff's deputies who had been waiting since dawn for her to make this exact mistake. I didn't rack the shotgun. That's Hollywood nonsense. I just let it rest across my lap, took a sip of my lukewarm coffee, and waited for the show to start, because to understand why a man who just wants to fish in peace ends up orchestrating a sting operation on a Saturday morning, you have to understand the land, and you have to understand the kind of woman who thinks she can steal it. My name is Caleb Vance, and I live at the end of a long gravel driveway in a place that used to be called just the Vance Farm before developers bought up the 300 acres surrounding me and turned it into Lakeside Reserve. My 5 acres were carved out in 1958 by my daddy, bought with money he saved from working the steel mills. It's a simple life. I've got a cabin with cedar siding that's weathered to a nice silver gray, a vegetable garden that my wife Martha tends to like it's a competitive sport, and a steel-reinforced fishing pier extending 40 feet into the deepest cove of Ironwood Lake. That pier isn't just wood and metal to me. It's where I taught my son to cast a line before we lost him to the service. It's where Martha and I have sat every evening for 30 years, watching the sun dip below the pines, drinking iced tea and not saying a word because we know each other's silence better than we know our own names. It's my church, my sanctuary, and my anchor. For years, the development next door left us alone. We were the rustic charm on the edge of their manicured lawns. But then Patty Sterling moved in from the city, bringing with her a fierce desire to manage things that didn't need managing and a complete inability to understand the word no. She swept the HOA elections on a platform of community enhancement and property value maximization, which are usually just fancy words for making everyone miserable. It started on a Tuesday, innocent enough, or so it seemed. I was down at the pier, welding a loose bracket on the railing. I'm a retired welder, so I fix things that aren't even broken just to keep my hands busy, when I heard the electric whine of a golf cart. I flipped up my welding mask, and there they were. Patty, dressed in white linen that had no business being near a welding torch, and her 2 lieutenants, Roger and Susan. Roger was a nervous little guy who always held a clipboard like a shield, and Susan was a woman whose resting face looked like she'd just smelled sour milk. "Good morning, Mr. Vance," Patty chirped, her voice dripping with that fake southern sugar that burns going down. "We were just doing our perimeter assessments, and, my goodness, this structure is quite industrial, isn't it?" I set down the torch. "It's built to last, Patty. Unlike those plastic fences you guys put up." She laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on my nerves like sand in a bearing. "Well, that's actually what we're here to discuss. You see, the board has launched a new initiative called Lake Access for All. We've realized that this cove is the only deep water access point in the area, and it's just a shame that it's being monopolized by a single residence." I wiped my hands on a rag. "It's not being monopolized, Patty. It's owned by me. It's private property." "Technically," Roger squeaked, consulting his clipboard. The original survey of the Greater Valley area suggests that riparian rights might be communal if the usage predates the... Roger. I cut him off, keeping my voice low and steady. My deed is from 1958. Your subdivision broke ground in 2010. My rights predate your entire neighborhood's existence. This isn't part of Lakeside Reserve. Never has been, never will be. Patty stepped forward, dropping the smile. Caleb, let's be reasonable. We're willing to make you a generous offer. We'll designate this the Advanced Community Pier, put up a nice plaque with your name on it, and the HOA will take over all maintenance costs. All you have to do is sign an easement allowing resident access. Think of the children. They have nowhere to launch their kayaks. They can launch them at the public boat ramp 3 miles down the road, I said, putting my mask back down. This is my home. It's where my wife reads her books. It's where I drink my coffee. It is not a public park. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do, and you're standing in a spark zone. They left, huffing and puffing, tires spinning in the gravel. I thought that was the end of it. I thought I was just dealing with a nosy neighbor who needed a hobby. I didn't realize I had just declared war. 3 days later, Martha came into the living room, her face pale, holding her tablet. Martha isn't a woman who scares easily. She spent 30 years as a high school librarian, meaning she's dealt with teenage delinquents and budget cuts, but she looked rattled. Caleb, she said, you need to see this. She pulled up the Lakeside Reserve Community Facebook page. There, right at the top, was a high-resolution drone photo of my property, my cabin, my garden, and my pier. The caption read, "Exciting news. The board is thrilled to announce the upcoming opening of the Lakeside Community Pier. Friendly negotiations are underway to secure this historic site for all residents to enjoy. Picnic tables and kayak racks coming soon. Hashtag community first, hashtag Lakeside Life." I felt the blood rise in my neck, hot and fast. She wasn't just lying. She was creating a narrative. She was telling hundreds of people that my home was effectively theirs, setting me up to be the villain when I inevitably said no. The comments were already rolling in. Finally, that old eyesore was going to waste. Can I book it for my daughter's birthday next Saturday? So generous of the HOA to secure this for us. I created an account right then and there, typed out a response explaining that this was private property and absolutely not for public use. But within 5 minutes, my comment was deleted and I was blocked from the page. Censorship, plain and simple. Then the people started showing up. Saturday morning, a minivan pulled down my driveway. A nice young couple with 3 kids and a golden retriever started unloading a cooler and lawn chairs right on my grass. I had to walk out there, feeling like the Grinch, and explain to them that they had been lied to. The dad was embarrassed, showed me the email newsletter Patty had sent out, an official-looking document with a map labeled New Community Access Point, right over my land. I spent the entire weekend turning people away. Some were nice, some were angry, yelling that they paid their HOA dues and had a right to be there. I felt like a bouncer at my own house. By Sunday night, Martha was in tears. "I don't feel safe, Caleb," she whispered, looking out the window at the dark road. "It feels like we're under siege." That broke something inside me. You can annoy me, you can trespass, but you do not make my wife cry in her own home. I called the sheriff's department on Monday. Deputy Miller, a good kid I'd known since he was in diapers, came out. He looked at the emails, looked at the drone photos. "Caleb," he said, scratching his chin, "this is harassment, sure, and civilly she's way out of line. But until they actually damage something or threaten you physically, it's a civil dispute. You need a lawyer, not a cop." "I don't want a lawyer, Miller. I want peace." "I know," he said, "but be careful. These HOA types, they think they're above the law because they write their own bylaws. Don't give them an inch." The escalation came 2 nights later. I was up late, reading, when the motion lights by the barn flared on. I went to the window and saw a shadow moving near the utility pole that feeds power to the pier lights. I grabbed a heavy flashlight and went out the back door. "Hey," I shouted. "Who's there?" The shadow bolted, sprinting into the woods toward the subdivision. I ran to the pole. The conduit had been smashed open, wires cut. They hadn't just vandalized it. They had tried to bypass the meter. Lying on the ground was a pair of wire strippers with the initials LRHOA written in Sharpie on the handle. Lakeside Reserve HOA. They weren't just trying to take the pier. They were trying to rig the utilities to make it look like I was the one stealing power, Or maybe they were just trying to cut my lights so they could come back later. I didn't call the cops immediately. I went back inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and looked at Martha. They want to fight, I said. So we're going to give them one. But we're not going to fight fair. We're going to fight smart. The next morning, I went into town. I didn't buy a lawyer. I bought tech. 3 4K trail cameras with night vision and cellular upload. I bought a new chain for the gate, grade 70 transport chain, the kind you use to tie down bulldozers, and a padlock that looked like a solid block of steel. I hid the cameras. One high up in the oak tree covering the driveway, one in the rhododendrons facing the pier, and one right by the utility pole. Then I waited. The trap was baited on Thursday. I deliberately left the gate slightly ajar during the day, creating the illusion of carelessness. Sure enough, that afternoon, a blue pickup truck rolled up. 2 guys got out. Not residents, looked like hired day laborers. They unloaded a pile of old tires, rusted metal, and bags of trash right onto the edge of my property line, positioning it so it looked like an illegal dump site. My phone buzzed. The camera in the oak tree sent me the footage instantly. Clear faces. License plate number. And then, 5 minutes later, Patty's luxury SUV pulled up. She didn't see the laborers, but she got out, took photos of the trash pile with her phone, smiling like a cat that just ate the canary. She was manufacturing a health and safety violation. She was going to use this to declare my property a public nuisance and petition the county to condemn it. It was diabolical, and it was exactly what I needed. I called Deputy Miller back. I've got them, I said. I've got them planting evidence, dumping illegal waste, and I've got the ringleader documenting the crime she just paid for. But I need more. I need to catch them in the act of the big steal. What do you mean? Miller asked. She sent me a certified letter today, I told him. Says that due to environmental hazards, meaning the trash she just dumped, the HOA is exercising emergency powers to seize the waterfront for remediation. They're coming Saturday morning at 8 a.m. to take the pier. They're bringing contractors. Miller was silent for a moment. Caleb, if they set foot on your land to seize property based on a crime they committed, that's conspiracy, fraud, criminal trespass, and illegal dumping. That's felony territory. Exactly, I said. So, do you want to arrest her now? Or do you want to wait until the party starts? I'll bring the boys, Miller said. We'll be in the bushes by 7:30. Which brings us back to Saturday morning. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and Patty Sterling was screaming into her megaphone. Last warning, Mr. Vance, she yelled. We have a contractor here ready to install the new safety gates. Do not obstruct community progress. The flatbed truck began to back up, the reverse beeper echoing through the quiet valley. Roger and Susan were flanking the golf carts, holding up signs that said, Community, Pier coming soon. It was a spectacle. I stood up slowly, picking up the shotgun. I didn't point it at them. I kept the barrel pointed safely at the dirt, but the sight of a 12-gauge has a way of focusing people's attention. The driver of the flatbed slammed on his brakes. Whoa, lady. I heard him yell out the window. You didn't say nothing about a guy with a shotgun. I ain't getting paid enough for this. He won't shoot. Patty screamed, her face turning a shade of red that clashed horribly with her pink blazer. He's just an old man trying to scare us. Drive. Patty, I called out, my voice carrying easily over the distance without a megaphone. You're making a mistake. A big one. The only mistake, she sneered, walking past the property line marker, her high heels sinking into the soft dirt of my driveway, was you thinking you could stand in the way of the future. This land belongs to the people of Lakeside Reserve. She signaled to her 2 goons, the laborers from the trash dumping incident, who she had apparently rehired as security. Remove the gate, she ordered. One of the guys, a big fellow with a mullet, stepped forward with a pair of bolt cutters. He clamped them onto my new transport chain and bore down. The chain didn't even scratch. He grunted, straining, veins popping in his neck. It's grade 70 steel, son, I said calmly. You're gonna break your teeth before you break that chain. Cut the fence then. Patty shrieked. Just get in there. Mullet Man moved to the wire fence. He snipped the first wire. Snip. That was the sound. The legal threshold. Destruction of property. Trespassing. Conspiracy. I looked toward the rhododendrons and nodded. Okay, Miller. I think we've seen enough. The bushes exploded. Not literally, but suddenly 3 sheriff's deputies in tactical gear, who had been indistinguishable from the shrubbery, stood up. Two more cruisers that had been idling silently down the road, engines off, suddenly roared to life, their lights flashing blue and blinding against the morning sun. The look on Patty's face was worth every penny I'd spent on that chain. It wasn't fear at first, it was confusion. Her brain simply couldn't process that the authority she thought she wielded was imaginary, while the authority rushing toward her with handcuffs was very, very real. "Sheriff's Department," Miller yelled, his voice booming. "Drop the cutters. Everyone stay where you are." The driver of the flatbed truck didn't hesitate. He threw the truck into drive, spun the wheel, and tore off across my front lawn, crushing Patty's community pier signs as he fled. He didn't care. He knew a sinking ship when he saw one. The two goons dropped their tools and put their hands up instantly. They knew the drill. But Patty? Patty ran. And friends, seeing a woman in a business suit try to sprint across a gravel driveway and up a muddy embankment in 3-inch stilettos is a sight that stays with you. She looked like a baby giraffe learning to walk on ice. She made it about 20 yards before one heel snapped. She went down in a heap, her portfolio flying open, papers scattering into the wind, fake permits, fake environmental reports, all of it fluttering away like startled pigeons. Miller jogged up to her, not even out of breath. He helped her up, but he didn't brush her off. He spun her around. Click, click. "Patricia Sterling," Miller said, and the words floated back to me on the porch like a favorite song. "You are under arrest for criminal trespass, destruction of property, filing false reports, and environmental dumping. We're also tacking on conspiracy to commit fraud." "You can't do this," she screamed, mud smeared across her cheek, her perfect hair now looking like a bird's nest. "I am the president. I have authority. That man is hoarding resources. That man," Miller said, guiding her toward the cruiser, "is the legal owner of this property, and you are currently the legal owner of the right to remain silent. I suggest you start using it." Roger and Susan, the loyal lieutenants, were frozen by their golf carts. Roger dropped his clipboard. Susan actually looked like she might faint. Miller pointed a finger at them. "Don't think you're walking away. We've got you on camera aiding and abetting. We'll be in touch." They scrambled into their carts and reversed so fast they collided with each other, creating a low-speed pileup of beige plastic and shame. I sat there on the porch for a long time after the cruisers left. The adrenaline faded, replaced by that deep, heavy fatigue you feel after a job is finally done. Martha came out, bringing 2 fresh cups of coffee. She sat down beside me, looked at the ruts in the lawn where the truck had fled, looked at the mud on the driveway, and then she rested her head on my shoulder. "Is it over?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said, taking a sip. "I reckon the war is over." The fallout was spectacular. In small towns, news travels faster than light, and gossip travels faster than that. Patty spent the weekend in county lockup because her husband, a sensible man who had apparently been tired of her antics for years, couldn't be reached to post bail until Monday morning. The trial was brief. The video evidence was damning. The text messages on the goons' phones linking Patty to the trash dumping were the final nail. She pleaded out to avoid felony time, accepting a sentence of 2 years probation, massive restitution fines, and a court order barring her from serving on any HOA board or community organization for life. She also had to pay for the damage to my lawn, the fence, and surprisingly, for the emotional distress caused to Martha. She sold her house in Lakeside Reserve 3 months later. Couldn't show her face. The last I heard, she moved to a condo in Florida. God help those people. But the best part wasn't the legal victory. It was the peace. The Lakeside Reserve HOA dissolved their Lake Access Committee. The new president, a nice guy named Dave who just wants to grill burgers and be left alone, came over with a bottle of bourbon and a formal apology. We drank on the porch and laughed about the Battle of Vance's Pier. Last week, I was down at the pier, casting for base. The sun was setting, turning the water into liquid gold. I caught a nice 4-pounder. As I was releasing him, I looked up at the house. Martha was in the garden, waving at me. The cameras are still there. I kept them up just in case, but they mostly just catch deer and the occasional fox now. I learned something through all this, something I think a lot of folks forget these days. You can be quiet, you can be polite, and you can keep to yourself, but that doesn't mean you have to be a doormat. There are people in this world, like Patty, who mistake silence for weakness. They think because you follow the rules, you won't fight back when they break them. They think a clipboard and a title give them the right to take what you've built. But sometimes, you have to remind them that the quietest man in the room is often the one you should worry about the most. You have to draw a line in the dirt, or in my case, the gravel, and say, not here. Not today. We kept the pier private. It's not a community asset. It's ours. But every now and then, if I see a kid fishing from the bank with a cane pole, looking longingly at the deep water, I'll wave him over. Come on out, I'll say. The big ones are under the pylons. Because sharing is a choice. It's an act of kindness. When it's forced, it's just theft. So, I've got a question for you folks. Where do you draw the line? We've all dealt with a patty at work, in the neighborhood, or maybe in our own families. Did I go too far with the sting operation? Should I have tried to make peace one more time, or did she get exactly what she deserved? And honestly, seeing her face down in the mud, was it wrong that I enjoyed it just a little bit? Let me know in the comments. I read them all, usually while sitting on my pier, enjoying the quiet. Thanks for listening. And remember, good fences make good neighbors, but a good camera system makes sure they stay that way. Y'all stay safe.